We face some problems when editing our own work. And those come in two forms. The writing process gets in the way, and our ability to read gets in the way. Of course, as you could guess, this has everything to do with the human brain, how it's wired, what has proven evolutionarily beneficial. Herein lies the challenge. We have to change the way we think before we can edit our writing. So first, let's look at the problems that stem from writing. Typos, of course. Because most of my editorial work has been in the medical and scientific space, I want to show you some beautiful examples taken from published work that I've encountered. I use these because the stakes involved in medical writing are kind of high. Basically, one wrong decimal place and somebody dies. So we would do well to take typos seriously. Now, I discovered this when I was working at Memorial Sloan Kettering. This was the cover page of a printed document that was going out to donors for fundraising. The spell check is not going to catch this. Now, I don't even know if the most sinister among us would say patient expiration date. That's patent, for those of you that don't work in that space. And this is, the V should be an N for creatine. Yeah, but this can only suggest that there's some really fancy things going on at the micro level. And I do wonder if the clinical trail is anything like the Primrose Path. I've taken strolls down both of those many times. So our eye will correct for these errors. Spell check, though, will not. We also face missing words. We've read something a bunch of times and we don't even notice, or we actually fill in one of the words that's missing, one of the most important words that changes the absolute meaning of the sentence. I see this a lot in academic writing and in scientific publications, and I know that none of you will propagate this, but scientists and junior investigators have a tendency to brain dump. This is what I know about this topic, and this paragraph is going to run on for 4 pages, and this is everything that relates to my knowledge to justify that I'm a smart person, to assure you that I should be publishing in this area, and so on. So, of course, we don't only want to have a brain dump after the first draft. We want to have a nice through line and a cogent idea. Now, I don't know if anybody on the call has ever written on a team before, but I'm going to assume so. You might be familiar with the big FINAL in the file name, and then the date after it, and then somebody's initials, or 10 people's initials after that. One of my participants said that they have seen, "and I really mean it," in the file name. So this is an issue where someone feels that they need to assert erroneously that the writing is complete. And this is another problem. Does anybody in the room today have all the time in the world to finish what you're working on? And if so, text me after this, because I want to work for y'all. Now, onto the reading problems. This is the first problem, how we cognitively compensate. I'll give you a sec. We spend half of our time reading things that are not proofread. Think about how many emails we get. What this does is reinforce our natural ability, that ability to make sense out of things that don't make sense. Our brains are hardwired to figure out anything that's confusing. This is what we do naturally. So if we're reading websites or publish things with errors or texts, anyone, that's all cognitive compensation. Our brains have evolved to correct for these things, but that actually gets in the way when we're reviewing our own work. And does anybody sleep with their computer? I mean, anybody sleep with their phone? We all do now, I suspect. Regardless, we all know that when we've worked on something a bunch, we are way too close to it. Similarly, when we read something a bunch of times, it can start to get boring. The one thing that I'll say about that is if you have a part in your work that you just want to skip over or skim through, that's exactly where you need to edit. That part reads the worst because you want to avoid it. That's your indicator. Here's your sign, in the immortal words of Bill Engvall. We want to convince ourselves that it's done, but in reality, we're just hiding something we don't want to face, i.e., more work. I don't know about you, but when I write something really good, I have to stop myself from reading it over and over again because it's just so satisfying. If you're avoiding it, it needs work. And keep in mind, the boring sections are the ones that need really close attention. The same thing with being mesmerized by the screen. We're looking at screens, as evidenced by what we're doing right now, all the time. We don't think that it affects how we're thinking until we look away and realize that there's a piece of paper that I could read this on. Further, if we're always editing on screen, we're not changing up the cognition. We're reinforcing that way of thinking. We were on screen when we were writing, so how are we going to edit it with new eyes? In our mind's eye, it's the same process. And then there are time constraints here too. How much time do we have to read this? How many of us are like, last period, references are good, boom, send? That's not wrong. It's a condition of our work. We consider ourselves thoughtful professionals, but sometimes it's only that we're hoping that we caught everything along the way. We've looked at it so many times already. But if we don't factor in time to read the work, because looking at a document isn't really reading it, how can we trust that it's been edited?